feel like you're stuck knowing you have more inside you, but just not sure how to get it out? This episode is for anyone who feels that the gap between their potential and their everyday reality. Welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Dahya. Today's guest is proof that greatness is not reserved for a chosen few. Jason Dunn spent years carrying the weight of unrealized potential, from giving up a childhood dream and drifting into habits that kept him stuck, to becoming an elite ultra-endurance athlete, an entrepreneur, CEO, author, and one of Australia's most inspiring voices on personal growth. His journey is powerful, and it's a reminder that our limits are often self-imposed. Jason is an ultra-endurance athlete, entrepreneur, former CEO, keynote speaker, and a best-selling author. He is also the author of The Unlimited, The Art of Being Limitless, and his latest book, Greatness Doesn't Care. His sporting achievements include Ironman events, racing at the Ironman World Championships in Hawaii, winning an ultra-distance events, and earning silver medals in Australia's elite 100K championships. Today, Jason shares his lessons on resilience, discipline, purpose, and unlocking human potential through his speaking, writing, and coaching work. Jason, it's great to have you back on the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. I was just reflecting back, and as we were saying, the last time you were here, we were at episode 84.
A while ago. I think my hair might have been a bit shorter. In fact, probably was a lot shorter, mate. But yeah, it was a while ago. So thank you for having me back on. And thank you. That's a very, very kind and generous introduction. I feel like that's quite a lot of pressure there to live up to that. But hey, it's great. Thank you.
No pressure at all. We're just going to have a conversation. So the last time we spoke, we talked about Unlimited and your journey of transformation. For those who may not have heard that conversation, can you take us back in summary who Jason was before the transformation began?
It began a long while ago, and I'm delighted to say that for me personally, that evolution continues every day. And I feel in many ways, which I know we'll get to, I feel in the last few years, I've learned as much and different things and gained a greater deal of wisdom that makes me a different person again today. To go back to your original point, in a nutshell, grew up in the UK, like every other, schoolboy and probably these days schoolgirls or children at school. Probably the number one dream or aspiration is to become a professional football player in the UK. And of course, that's rapidly growing in Australia. I'm still celebrating the win from yesterday. Brilliant win. So I poured everything into that. I mean, I worked pretty hard on a lot of other things, my schoolwork, but I eventually, my dream, I got an invitation to my dream at the age of 15, and a first division club in the UK offered me an apprenticeship, which, for the age of 16. And, it had finally happened. I was delighted to receive that. But, once I sat down, the excitement tapered away. I really thought about, I had this fight between as we often do as humans, this fight between my mind and my heart. And at 15, the way I'd been raised, then the priority was to finish my education, get a good education, obviously, begin a career. And combined with the fact that I would have had to have gone, as a 15-year-old with my school studies, got on a train and traveled 2.5 hours to Southend on the South Coast, and then 2.5 hours back. Logistically, it was an absolute nightmare. And back in those days, professional clubs would take on 40 apprentices. Basically your main job was cleaning muddy football boots, and they don't really have that these days because the pitches are so perfect. But that was the job. And on average, they would retain probably 2 out of the 40. So extremely high risk. I would have had to dedicate those kind of key formative years to my dream, but it just didn't make logical sense. And so I declined that, and I lived in the shadow of that decision for a very long time. I was 15 years of age. I was probably a little ahead of my time in terms of I started going to the pub, started drinking, and just having a good time. All the other things that a 15 and 16-year-old do. And so I gave it up. And I lived in that shadow. I lived with this snowballing regret for the next 20 years. And that, I won't say it consumed my life, but it consumed me and how I felt about me. And the regret was immense. It just kept going. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how I got to the start of transformation. And my decisions were often poor, and they were based on instant gratification, taking the easier road for the most pleasure, and I knew it, and it gripped me for a very long time, and it just kept growing to the point that when I looked in the mirror, kind of didn't really like who I saw, and I didn't feel good about myself. And what made it worse was, I believe I grew up in an environment where you needed to perform and that ego played a large part of that. I don't think we're born with ego. I think it's created by our environment. And so I lived with actions that were ego driven for a long time. So I knew I desperately needed to change. I didn't know how, I didn't know where, life was busy, had a career, family. But I knew for me, I was that gap that you talk about. My potential was pretty good, and my reality and my execution and action were a very, very, very long way from my potential. And so I knew I needed to start closing that gap. And one of the interesting things that I also share a lot today is during that time and past that time, I would go to conferences and I would listen to the most remarkable humans on the planet. People that you kind of put up there, they're up there, and you sit there in awe. You can hear a pin drop in the audience. And like most people, I would be mesmerized, I'd be captivated, but I'd leave and nothing would change
Mm.
and nothing would change. So just by chance, I knew I was looking for something. A friend of mine dared me to do a corporate triathlon. I hadn't even heard, I was 34, almost 35. I didn't know what a triathlon was, and despite living in Australia. So I kind of looked it up, Googled it, and I went, oh yeah, okay, I could do that. Like there's 3 legs to it. It's a corporate one. There's 3 in the team. Yeah, I'll do that. I can do the running. So I accepted. And a couple of weeks later, I caught up with my mate and he said, Jace, how's the training going? We're having a cup of coffee. And I said, yeah, it's going pretty well. I reckon I can kind of nail the 3 kilometers because that's a pretty short distance. And even though I sort of smoked cigarettes for the last 20 years and I spend a lot of that time or my leisurely hours probably on the couch, I said, yeah, I'll do that. And he said, well, what do you mean the running? He said, how's the swimming and the biking going? And I must have, the color drained from my face. Felt sick in my stomach. He said, I said, what do you mean swimming? And I'm just doing the run. He goes, no, mate, you're doing it all. And I felt sick. And I kind of sat back in the chair and I reflected and I knew this was the time. I just knew this was the time. And to put that into context, yeah, I'd ridden a bike riding up and down the street as a child, but never a proper bike. And I couldn't swim. In fact, my deepest fear in life was drowning. I would, sometimes you have nightmares from things that consistently scare you the most. Drowning was the nightmare for me that was a continual loop. So I was petrified, but I said yes. And so I knew I had 10 weeks to go. It was 10 weeks really to save my life or to save myself from, acute embarrassment in front of lots of people watching. So both of those were motivators for me. And I started to sort of schedule out my training, went and bought some swimming gear, scheduled it to go to the pool the next day at 6 o'clock after work in Brisbane. And I was so terrified that, all day I had my hands were sweaty. I got to the pool. I sat outside in the car, turned the engine off, and I sat there for 20 minutes. I was so scared that I sat there for 20 minutes and debated with myself. Actually, perhaps what I was doing was I was debating with the person that I could be and should be, and the person that I currently was. That's probably a pretty fair assumption. So, sat there for 20 minutes as war waged between my heart and my head, and eventually I just went, no, you got to do it. Just got to go. That's it. Go. And I went in and it was awful. I mean, you can read about it in detail in my first book. Well, you have read about it. But I just went, you know what? I'm going to try and swim. I couldn't put my head underwater either without getting, without panicking. And in busy swimming lanes and an indoor pool, it's not a good place to start. So anyway, I got in. I managed to swim 25 meters. I was gasping for air and hanging onto the side. gave a few more minutes and then swam back and a few mouthfuls of chlorinated water and it was done. That was 50 meters. And when I drove away and I was thinking about it, I could just feel this, rising, sense of pride or euphoria or, it was probably a whole bunch of things. And I went to myself, you know what? You can do this. You're going to do this. You can do this. And so really what I then did was I made up my own high performance template, which essentially is a plan that can run, towards goals that are 10 years away. And it literally details what it is you need to get up and, and do each day, what the objectives are. And so you hold yourself accountable and you start that process, which obviously after a period of time, that actually forms habits. And so that's kind of what I did. And I also at the same time, I adopted this mantra, which went like this: to be truly successful in life, you must first do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it until you do. And I lived by that every day. Every time there was something that, my mind, every time, I'd have a thought, that's hard, or I can't do that, or whatever it was, or I don't want to do that because it requires significant discretionary effort. I would rein that back in and go, you know what, you need to do this because this is what will make you successful. And in terms of success, how I see my own success, and that applies to every aspect of life. It's like when you come home to your kids, it's been a really busy, shitty day. You just want to sit on the couch, the kids running in the gym. Okay, Dad, can we go and do this? And your head's going in your head. You go, oh, I just want to watch television. But in that moment, success in your relationship is making an instant decision. I learned to make those decisions in 4 seconds. Is you go, you know what? Success with my children and my relationship, they don't care whether they're 4 and 6. They don't care whether I'm tired. They just care whether Dad's going to go out in the street and kick the ball around with them or play a board game or whatever. And so I utilize that mantra many, many, many times a day. And that enabled me to start making the right small choices. And, there's a lot of sliding door moments in life. For me, the sliding door moment was, sitting outside that pool and actually making a decision to go in and face this and do it. The fear element of that is once you start making those decisions, you're going to need to make thousands more. You can't do it once and then not show up. You keep making thousands more. But potentially they're all sliding door moments. We watch a movie and it's all about that one moment that changes your life, but there are thousands of moments that change your life. And when you get to the point, it becomes a habit and you know what difference it makes to your life. It doesn't become a decision. It's just automatic. You just do it. So anyway, that's what I did. I rocked up. I went to the front wave of 150 people in my age group. And, me being me, I stood right at the front. Thought, I'm a pretty fast runner. I'm going to get a good start on this field. I did that, went in, I was away. I was ahead of everybody else. And by the time we sort of got 50 meters out into the middle of a tidal river, which was flowing fairly quickly, everyone else has swum over me. And I think I went around the first buoy and I flipped over onto my back like a turtle and just paddled a little bit. And I kind of part of me wanted to go, well, where am I in the field? Even though I turned around, there was no one. So I was last. But that wasn't a nice feeling. But anyway, I went, you know what? You came here to do this. You got to do this. And I got through it. I did the 300-meter swim without drowning, dying, being embarrassed. I felt great. So I headed off, did the bike and did the run. I think I went from 150th place to about 11th. And I was elated. And for a week, I just floated on this euphoria and on this accomplishment. I felt proud of myself. And then I kind of had this empty vacuum, as you do as athletes often experience after a race that they've targeted for a long time. And I knew I needed more. And that's when I knew I didn't just need a goal. And there's a lot of difference between a goal and purpose. And I'll explain as we go along, because that's a very important differentiation. And I believe that's why, 90% of people that set New Year's resolutions fail, is because it's a goal that has no substance and no purpose. So I knew I needed a purpose. And the purpose that just came to me was, I feel so good doing this. I feel so good about myself that I haven't taken the easier road, that I've started, that I've proved to myself that I can do something. My purpose became go find what I was capable of, to find out where my limits were. It was kind of like, Jason, you've done this. Now you need to go and show yourself what it is you can do. Now you need to go and find out where your limits are, or essentially, which is the title of my first book, which is Unlimited, it is a process you go through experience of
Mm.
developing a mindset that your first response to anything is, yeah, I believe I can do that. Not, I can't do that. It's for someone else, whatever. And so the limitations, once you begin to chip away and remove those limitations, is you can get to the point you have an unlimited mindset. And so in my searching, I defined that purpose and I wrote that purpose down. And so to go and set myself a huge goal that could not have to be more aligned with the purpose that I'd set anymore came literally 2 weeks later, another week later, when I was watching the Hawaii Ironman World Championships on the Wide World of Sports on the couch, cigarette in my hand. Used to smoke inside back then. As you know, I'm pretty old. So I had a cigarette, a cup of coffee, and I watched it. I was just gobsmacked. And I went, that's for me. That is going to, that for me will completely validate how far you can possibly push yourself. But the challenge with that is then that I just survived this very short event. And my next goal towards that huge goal of qualifying for the Hawaii Ironman World Championships was to do an Ironman, which meant somewhere between what I'd just done, I would have to do 14 to 16 times each individual leg just to complete it. So beyond the completing it bit was to get to the World Championships, I would have to qualify and kind of, need to be in the top 5% in my age group at a particular race somewhere in the world that was a qualifying event. Then I would qualify. So that became my 5-year goal. It was my 5-year goal that supported my purpose, which was to go and prove to myself what I was capable of, not what I wasn't capable of.
Oh, wow. And in that moment before you actually decided to take, because your friend said to you, it's not just running, it's also swimming and cycling as well. What was going on internally before that event? And also, what do you feel was holding you back?
Before that the point that so after I realized until the event,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, again, it was, I continually refocused on my purpose, and it aligned to my purpose, which was, go and find out what you're capable of. I just think it was time. It was, Anthony, it was just well overdue, that the time for me to stop taking the easier path, the time for me to stop searching for instant gratification, which we're all pretty
Oh,
good at doing these days, that this was a pivotal moment. And I recognized that this was my opportunity to change the course and direction of my life. And I knew I had to seize it. It was now. And otherwise, and so also shortly after that, I kind of developed this, I call it the armchair test. And it actually came on the back. I was in financial services for decades. In the early days as a financial advisor, to get people to see the future, I would ask them to close their eyes and imagine the future, because we're so busy day after day after day that just tick by, and then all of a sudden you're 60. So I would ask people to imagine you're retiring and you're age 65. Close your eyes and tell me about where you want to be, what you want to be doing, what will excite you, what will fulfill you, because that's going to happen one day. But most people, it just creeps up, and then the next thing it is that happens. So I developed what I call the armchair test, which is an exercise in my first book, Unlimited, which is where you get to think about your legacy, and where you get to imagine sitting in an armchair when you retire at 60 or 65. By the way, when you have all the time in the world to consider your life, I've seen it many hundreds of times, and often people live with enormous amounts of regret. It's almost like a inflection point that says, how are you going to feel about your life right now in 20 years when you've got all the time in the world to think about it? But it's going to be you can't go back and change the past. I mean, you can still change and improve every day at age 65, but how are you going to feel about the meaning in your life and what you've achieved? And so you write it down. And what I wrote down was awful. well, a lot of it was, I started to think and compare them and say, okay, well, you feel this enormous regret now. Unless you really change your life, you are going to be depressed. You're going to be miserable at age 65. And all you're going to think about is, I should have, I could have, I should have, I could have, but you will know that you didn't. And that is a very powerful exercise. It's like a stock take of your life so far. And the stock
Yeah.
take is not about the things around you. It's not about the things you have. It's not about the car you drive or the house you live in. It's about how you feel about yourself. It's about meaning in your life. And that meaning can be anything. Obviously, I'm not, it's family, but it's everything. How do you feel about your life? More recently, termed this as, are you living a full life or are you living a half life or are you living a quarter life? I don't look at anyone and judge them unless they have a really poor character and that is exposed. I don't look at what people have. I don't look at whether they can run as fast as me or I don't think of what house they live in. It's, this is about your life and what brings meaning to your life. And mine has constantly evolved and it has brought things, even we'll get to this in a sec, even the last few years, it's brought things to my life that 10 years ago, I'd achieved a lot. Did I think I could achieve what I've achieved in the last 3 years back then? Not back then. So when you are continually aligned, once you have a meaningful purpose or purposes and you're continually aligned to them, your life will just keep opening up. It will keep opening up and things will happen that you never believed or had conceived of happening.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. Uh,
You know,
you've got to find that purpose that aligns with you, and just keep consistently moving forward towards it. I kind of like the analogy of an automatic door. If you don't step up to the sensor, the doors won't open for you.
absolutely.
So if you sit back and just look at the door, it's not going to open. But
No.
if you take a step forward, then the door opens for you. People will say, "Well, what is my purpose?" Well, what feels purposeful to you? So hosting this podcast feels purpose to me because I'm creating a change in the world,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
Um, so I'm putting all my energy into this because I know that I may not be seeing all the things that I want to see, but in time it will come. So yeah,
Yeah.
you got to
And
have
it's
that faith.
absolute. Well, it's a very salient point because in the new book, and sorry if I'm jumping around, but
No, no, all good.
I've got, there's 14 steps to greatness, which one of those really critical steps is belief. And belief is created by actions that demonstrate proof. And they might be incremental, they might be really small, they might be occasionally they're large, but they're incremental ones that you you action every single day that turn into something that can be absolutely fit for you, can be absolutely extraordinary. And there is a framework. I believe everybody in this world is is on that pathway somewhere. They're on the pathway. Everyone wants Most people want some form of greatness. And I explain that because it's not about being better, but belief is one of those critical steps. It's one of the 14 critical steps. And many of us don't believe in ourselves for a whole variety of reasons. So fear and lack of belief are, two massive anchors.
I I'm totally aligned with you because I believe that everyone has greatness within them. You may not feel that way because you may not be looking internally, you may be looking externally. And in this podcast, I always end it with champion your life and champion your greatness because you're championing who you are
Yeah,
and you've got greatness within you. You just got to find it. Dig deep and find it. And then, like
absolutely.
you did, you went searching for the purpose and the potential and you found it and you went for it. So the first book was Unlimited, which was about breaking through self-imposed limits. Your latest book is called Greatness Doesn't Care. Tell us more about that.
Be happy to. Thank you. By the way, can I do a shameless plug?
100%. Go for it. Love it. Love the cover.
Yeah, look, it's so shiny. You leave fingerprints on it. Uh, that's the new one. Okay, so it'd probably be prudent to explain maybe in context why the second book. So Unlimited, I wrote Unlimited because I wanted to share what had worked for me. I wanted to share my journey, pathway, whatever you want to call it. I want to share how I got from where I was, to where I was at that point in time, 3, 4 years ago. I just wanted to help. So my purpose in the last, 5 years, I think my career has been aligned to that, but my purpose is to help make a difference to as many people as I can and to help one other human go find their greatness. That is my purpose. And that for me is more valuable and meaningful these days, excluding my family. That's more valuable and meaningful than anything. And I feel very, very grateful. So I wrote Unlimited. I was a novice writer. I was pretty happy with it. I self-published because nobody would take it on. And I had intended it to be, be a self-help, clearly a self-help book. These are the things that I did at this point, and this is what it kind of meant for me. It evolved and became partly that, partly probably a lot more of a memoir. And, in the world, I'm a nobody, so nobody's going to buy my memoir. And certainly you won't get a leading publisher to take you on for Jason Dunn nobody memoir. So I thought, that for me was another point that I had to go face a massive fear. So, fear, I talk a lot about fears in my books. They are the main reason why the people that don't get to achieve their potential and live their fullest life, find the greatest version of themselves, are the ones that live with a fear. Many fears. We all have loads of fears. Of my life, I've had a bunch of them. And so one of my fears would be, again, ego, being, socially embarrassed. What if I put this book out and nobody read it? Well, I thought it was a load of rubbish, yada, yada, yada. And then I went, no, sod it. I'm just, bugger it. I'm going to do it. My purpose is to help other people find a better life by sharing what I've seen, what I've done, how I evolved. So yeah, I'm going to do it. I didn't really, I promoted it, didn't spend any money in promotion. I recorded my own audiobook, and for 2.5 years, I think about 5,000 people around the world have kindly read or listened to my story. Bizarrely, some people listen to an audiobook twice in a week. And then I started to get this just a whole bunch of feedback from different people around the world I hadn't met. And, you inspired me, or I read, and now I've gone and done this, which I never ever thought I could do. I've done my first half Ironman or whatever it is. And every time I read that, and some of those people I know, they become good friends. I know them really well. And, that's absolutely what I like. So that's why I wrote the first book. About a year and a half ago, I reread it a couple of times and thought, you know what, I can do a much better job than that. Like I've grown. Since I started writing in a couple of years, I've grown. I've learned so much, and I am becoming a better person. And so, you know what I want to do? This time, I'm going to write it as a roadmap. I'm going to write it so that almost anyone can pick it up and go, that's where I'm stuck. That is where that's where my growth has stalled. That is my next best opportunity. What does it mean? And what can I do? What can I do just to take the first step, and the incremental small steps that start to build confidence and belief and get you going? Because what's most important of all is it gets you going. So that's why I wrote Greatness Doesn't Care, because I thought I could do a better job of helping people. Greatness doesn't care. I just, obviously and all writers or authors want a title that people can associate with quickly and they take some action. And that for me made so much sense, because greatness didn't care who I was, didn't care how old I was, what color I was, what my faith is, religion, what's happened in my life, didn't care. And it doesn't care about anyone. And the annals of history are full of people that, I'm way down the chain in terms of achievements, people that dedicate their lives, truly remarkable humans that change the world. And if you look at their backgrounds, none of them were privileged. Most of them, they weren't privileged. They were not scholars. They were not geniuses. They were not incredibly talented, but they achieved the most remarkable things, the most remarkable feats in our history. And the world's full of them. The world's full of people like that defy, their history. And so greatness doesn't care who you are, where you're from, what your color is, age, none of that stuff. All that it does ask is that you find your purpose and you go after it. That's all greatness cares about. So greatness doesn't care how you become the greatest version of you. That's why that's sort of the book in a nutshell. But, there are 14 key steps to that, and they're all important. You could be highly successful, but there are many things in your life that you can improve. Sometimes highly successful people devote themselves so much that they don't create stillness in their life. And if you don't have stillness, you don't have mindful appreciation. If you don't have stillness, you don't have the time to have clarity of thought, to think about what else you can do. What can you do next? So that's an example. The key ones though, the big ones, I think are kind of crammed more up the ones to get you going are crammed up the start of that journey. I call it, your greatness bus, and you're going to hop on at one of the stops onto your greatness bus. So the first and foremost is purpose. And that's it. I'm not going to dig deeply into that. I think you understand that, but it's a purpose. Actually, let me give you, if it's okay, can I give you an example? I believe most people fail their New Year's resolutions is because, and they say 90% of humans, it's estimated, and the research points to 90% of humans, in that year, 9 in 10 do not achieve the goal they set out to. And there's a very large number, about 70%, that it's all but gone by the end of January. This is gone. Let me give you an example of, we're humans, we're highly emotional. A goal might be, I want to lose 7 kilos in weight. That's a goal. Admirable goal, but it's pretty hollow. Doesn't kind of mean anything. And also, by the way, I find often most people want to lose weight to look better, as opposed to, when one of the main drivers and benefits of losing weight is to feel better.
Feel better.
Because
They're focusing on the outward rather than the internal, right?
Absolutely. So and the motivation is a valid one. I mean, if that's your motivation, it's valid. But, I see lots of people that aren't well, they might actually, they might be slim or whatever. You've got to be well. And so people focus on a lot of things that don't make a great deal of difference to wellness. So let's just take that point. I want to lose 7 kilos. There's very little plan. You've got to have planning is one of the key 14 steps. For me in the book, it's number 4. Doesn't mean to say it's the 4th most important, but planning any aspect of your life is critically important. So they don't have a plan. They don't have a purpose. That's a goal, not a purpose. A purpose might be something like, I want to lose 7 kilos in weight so that I feel the best I've felt for years, or the best I've felt in my life, so I can go and run and play with my children. I can feel energized and I'm not tired. And I live longer and I live happier and I feel better. That's a purpose, and that's a powerful purpose. So that for me is where people get, goals are not purpose. Goals are short-term milestones around something that you want to achieve. Often, even sometimes when people achieve it without planning and without a purpose, then they stop. I did it. And if I think about how blessed I am in my life to continually find things, revealing themselves as I do more, and I become more accomplished at things that I want to do. I thought I was unlimited when I wrote Unlimited, but I've obviously got it wrong. I keep finding different versions of me and different ways to improve. So, so purpose is number 1. Courage is number 2, without a doubt. And I talk a lot about what courage actually is to me, what I believe it is to many other successful humans, and how they use courage to overcome fear, at least take the first step and overcome some fear courage is, is absolutely essential. And I talk a lot about in detail about how you can actually build it. The next is mindset, and then planning, and then sacrifice, resilience, discipline. And then you start to go into some of the things, some of the ones that people might call a little softer, things like stillness, presence, gratitude, belief, movement, nutrition, eating well. I mean, finding your own greatness and achieving a whole bunch of stuff if you're not well feels a little bit, doesn't feel like you've truly found your greatness. So to, for your mind and your body to operate, to the best of their capacity, you need to eat well. And one of the very last things, which for me is quite unique, this is my biggest growth part of me that's grown in the last few years, is vulnerability. And vulnerability, when you've been a CEO, when you've been on the edge, especially if you've sort of, they've been in companies where, I had at least one that was, a big, big, big challenge to turn around. You do tough things. I've done a lot of tough things in my life, and I don't know whether you're going to get to it. I probably forgot to mention I've been hospitalized 35 times. Touch wood, but that's it. I don't think it will be though. 35 times, 4 near-death accidents, some life-threatening illnesses, more than 40 broken bones, and a lot of other challenges in a lot of other areas of my life. So, yeah, you become tough. You toughen up. Your resilience is up there. And you also think that that's what people want to see from someone running a company, because they don't want uncertainty and doubt and whatever. But it doesn't make you the greatest person. And, you fix a mindset that you kind of got to change. Otherwise you're not going to grow. So Lisa, my partner, taught me to be vulnerable. And what that means is quickly accepting when you've stuffed up and you're wrong. Not so much that, hey, I'm wrong. Well, it is, hey, I'm wrong, but it's, hey, that wasn't good. I can do better than that. And so this is what I'm going to do. And you accept that responsibility. You don't shrug it, you don't blame it, you accept that responsibility. And also, kind of the more you do, you actually have to unwind that and go, I'm just a human with 2 arms and 2 legs. I'm not better than people. And so I think that I talk a lot in my book, especially the new one, about tempering my ego, because that's how I, in some respects, that's how I grew up. And I fought with that all my life. The irony now is, especially with the second book, is I have, I do things for altruistic and all sorts of different reasons now, not ego. And I think one of the ways that I've worked on that and tempered that is because it doesn't matter what, I know I've written books, but I don't need other people to know. I do not need recognition. And because I know what I've done, I know what I've done. And there's quiet moments. I know those moments of pride. I know how they brought meaning to my life. And so that's the biggest part of me that's changed, is ego as a driver and being vulnerable. They're my
Yeah.
massive learnings in the last, 5 years or so.
Yeah, and you're sharing that vulnerability in your book and your speeches that you do and your podcasts that you, and that's great. And what I'm going to do is, when we publish this episode, I'm going to link the episode 84. So if anyone's watching this and you haven't seen episode 84,
Yeah.
that's got everything we talked about in the Unlimited book. Now, what do people most misunderstand about being great?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that, because that's probably one of my favorite concepts or points. Because when you talk about greatness, so, your listeners might be watching this going, oh, guy thinks he's great. So what I really want to, sharpen what I mean by greatness. And this is a really important, differentiation or concept, is greatness is personal. Greatness is derived from following your purpose, and it is not about winning. It might be. I mean, to some it will be. And there will be some, at elite level in anything that are aspiring to kind of win. But it is not about winning, because I believe that most people actually don't get going because what they see as, an inspiration or a goal or whatever it is so far away that they don't believe that's them. They don't believe that, they believe that greatness is reserved for the privileged. As you said at the start, it's reserved for, the incredibly intelligent or, someone else other than themselves. But greatness is feeling or an emotion. Greatness is you achieving an accomplishment or a series of accomplishments or feats that are meaningful to you, and they are better than you. It's about you being better than you were yesterday, better than you were a month ago or 2 months ago. I mean, reality is we all got off days. You can't be better every day, but it greatness is overcoming struggle and adversity and setbacks. You cannot find your own greatness without overcoming them, or at least facing them, at least dealing with them. And, if greatness is about winning, I think the last estimate I saw was there are 8.239 billion humans on our earth. So only one's going to win at something, win the Nobel Peace Prize. But literally, you're one of 8.239 billion people. If you're a marathon runner, only one person out of 8.239 billion can win the world championships or, the London Marathon. So what does that mean for the rest? Because that's an awful lot of people that didn't win. And I think the simplest analogy I can give is, like you're someone that hasn't done a great deal of activity and exercise, and you get yourself going, and maybe you manage to run a 5 or a 10-kilometer race. Might be a 5K park run. Maybe you'd never run in your life and you're 45 years of age, but you do it. You overcome a bunch of struggle. You plan, you find the courage, all, elements of the greatness, and you persevere and you do it. That is greatness. Because maybe 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, if someone says, she's going to do a 10-kilometer run, you'd probably be one of those people that say, no, I can't do that. That's not for me. I can't. Can't is one of the 5 words I removed from my vocabulary 25 years ago, as you know, because it's such an inhibitor. But that's what greatness is. Greatness is happiness and meaning by achieving an accomplishment. And when I say achieve, an accomplishment might be you raise happy children, that are, compassionate and kind, and they're ready for the world. That's greatness. That is a challenging thing to do. So it doesn't matter what it is. And it is not a comparison. Comparison truly is the thief of joy. If you're going to compare yourself, then 8.239 billion minus one are going to be disappointed. And so it is about keeping going. It's about keeping moving. It's about overcoming setbacks. It's about facing fear. It's about a whole bunch of things that make you feel really good about yourself. And at the end of it, whatever it is you do in life, you don't do things that make you feel good about you. We want to feel good about us. I don't mean too many people going, I really want to feel good about myself. We all do. And so greatness is meaningful only to you. And you've got to stop comparing yourself, because you just won't get going. If you haven't done a 10K race and you come in 1,239th and it's meaningful to you, that is greatness. That is absolutely great. So that's probably the most important, thread or concept of greatness doesn't care is what actually is greatness. And one of the other really significant ones in there, and I'd sort of triggered from talking about struggle, is, in many respects, I know there's lots of people who don't, but generally, say in Australia or many places around the world, life compared with the way it was 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, we've got a relatively comfortable life. And I know that because I am 62 and I lived long enough to remember what it was like. But the environment you're in is actually the one you know. So we have a fairly comfortable life. And most people avoid or bemoan struggle. And so I got to tell you, you can rewire your mind to welcome struggle. They're the two ends of the extreme. I avoid struggle as much as I can, one end. And on the other end is, bring on the struggle, bring it on, because I can only find greatness through struggle. I think when that first dawned on me, because your mind instantly, you're doing something, it says, you're running up a hill. Your mind's going to go, this is hard. Your body's feeling it, your mind, this is hard. As you know, I removed the word hard. I don't tell myself anything is hard anymore, because if I tell myself it is, then it will be. So I don't. So I learned to train my mind to deal with that thought that would be omnipresent. So if you're going to, every week, at least once a week, I would run up and down a single hill for 6 hours up the road in Neutral Bay, 5Ks up, 1.5Ks down. I would run it 20 times, 30 up, 30 down, 6 hours. And some of those days it was, in the mid 30 degrees Celsius. And I train my mind. You train your mind to do things that fight back against the natural tendencies that we have, upbringing, society, the messages we receive. You can train it. Because whatever you think it is, it will be. So if you think generally positively and you do that enough, it will be. So the couple of things I used to do when I ran up hills, when it got, when it really started to hurt and your mind's, gosh, oh yeah, you can go home. I only lived a kilometer away, so I could just trot home. But if I was 4 hours in, I had 2 hours left. And so the first thing I did was I smiled, big smile, and it would go away. Instantly, we get no matter what negative thought you have, if you genuinely smile, it will do a whole bunch of things to your mind and body chemically, but it will go away. And so I trained us to do that. But I also, and in the early days when I wake up on a winter's morning and I got to go training and it's cold and you got to, lying there think about going to a swimming pool, I adopted the 4-second rule, which is where you just give yourself 4 seconds to make a decision because you will follow your heart instead of your head. But the other was to say, when struggle came along, was to say, to be truly successful, you got to do what you don't want to do, but you don't want to do it until you do. And my mind would then associate the struggle with success. That is it. Struggle, success. It would be, this is challenging, but if you do this, that's what goes. This very struggle is what will make me successful. This very struggle will bring meaning to my life. And so I didn't brush it off. I actually welcomed it because for me, that struggle was the key. So why avoid it? And you're going to avoid it. You won't do any. Every time you choose not to do that, you choose an easier path. And so the likelihood that you will feel really good about yourself and achieve something is significantly diminished. So
Yeah.
struggle, success, simple. And you know what, Anthony, the other thing is if you get something and you haven't struggled, it probably won't be very meaningful. And I worked in financial services, as I said, for many decades, and you'd see people that acquired wealth. Maybe they won it. You see lottery winners, they kind of frequently come in. And we know the research tells us, I knew from experience that most people that won the lottery would be worse off in 12 months or they'd have nothing left. I think they actually say that 75%, 3/4 of people within 2 years are worse off than when they started and they have nothing left and they probably owe money. And that's because they don't have the skill or the expertise because they didn't actually earn it in the first place. They didn't have the same meaning. They didn't get up every day and struggle for their family and struggle to work and you don't have the pride of what you've built. For me, if you do well in life, it's about, financially, it's about the pride, the things that you did and your family did to get that, to achieve that. So when you win it or you acquire it, then it will be short-lived and it will not be meaningful. And I believe it's the same with everything in life. If you don't have struggle, then you don't have meaning.
Yeah. 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 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know, like a couple of short stories I want to share with you? So talking about struggle, I've been through something like I went through abandonment and rejection in my early childhood,
Uh-huh.
and I've been through 24 restructures and 4 redundancies in my career.
Wow.
And every one of those took me back to my 7-year-old self in
Yeah.
an ashram in India, which was literally crossed between army and prison, barbed wire fences. So to me, the job became a prison, but it was coming to that realization that, hang on, really not meant to be here, I'm meant to be doing something which is gonna feel like it's gonna have to put a lot of effort into. But once I actually realized that and started doing that,
Yeah.
like this podcast wouldn't have been birthed. It was birthed through adversity.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't taken that step forward and gone, I'm gonna do this, then it wouldn't have happened. But you were talking about running before, and I remember back in, gosh, when was it? Probably 28. I decided to, because some guys at work were doing running and stuff, and I said, "Oh, I'm gonna do the 5K." And then, and I'd never run in my life before. And this guy goes, "Why don't you do the 10K?" I'm like, and I went, "Yep, I'm gonna do the 10K."
Yeah.
And so I signed up, and it was like 2 months away, and I decided to go and do the training at that circuit. It was a 10 kilometre run in a place called Devonport in Auckland.
No.
And you got to run up this hill, and it's up to the mountain back, and it's quite full on. So the first run I did was an hour, 26 minutes. And then I went back a couple of weekends after, and I did an hour, 17 minutes. And on the day of the race, I got to Torpedo Bay, which is literally the long straight back to the finish line. And I looked at my watch, and I was like, I can do this. Because one thing I didn't mention was that 2 months before, I had set uh, a time limit on myself. I said I was going to do this race in 1 hour and 10 minutes, right? So my goal was 1 hour, 10 minutes. And on the day, I look at my watch and I go, I can do this. And I finished that race in 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 10 seconds.
Wow. And how'd you
And
feel?
I felt amazing. I was like, wow. And I got hooked, and I just started doing run after run after run after run. And I think my best 10K run was 1 hour, 4 minutes. But, you know,
Well
just
done.
had a,
It's
yeah, thank you.
about you. And it is that realization that it's, you're doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it until you do. Because what happens is all the things that come with, achieving something that challenged you, that you had to overcome struggle, that you had to continue, you had to push through, whatever it is, bring meaning. And then you start to feel better because you're fitter, you feel more energized and all the other benefits. Then suddenly you want to do something. Then you do want to do it because you just get why, and it becomes a habit and it becomes identity. And identity is literally how we see ourselves. And, identity plays a huge part. If you don't see yourself as someone that can be great in winning, but if that's not your identity, if you think that someone else is, yeah, if you don't believe, not going to happen. But all these things are gradual. And some of the 14 steps you kind of got to continually practice. But there will be times in your life, or maybe right now, where one of those things is a big thing. And the thing that stops you is courage, maybe. That's normally the biggest thing. So I worked on a whole bunch of different mindset tools, which, I wrote down, but then, they just become habit and they're in your mind. So I share a bunch of those in different books around how you can deal with that fear, how you can conceptualize, there's one exercise, are you, 100, you've fallen off, you got left 10 miles out at sea in the middle of nowhere, by a scuba diving trip, and you didn't, the gear's still on board and they've forgotten you and off they've gone, and the sharks' fins surrounding you. You're going to die. You're going to die. That's worth worrying about. But, a mosquito bite at a barbecue is not worth worrying about. And so being able to conceptualize fear instantly and go kind of what's the worst thing? Every time the people around me, they'll say something to me, and these days they'll say something and halfway through I'll go, actually, it's probably not as bad as that. Because they know I'm going to go, what's the worst thing could happen with that? You're just talking about what's the worst thing going to happen? You're going to die? Is someone in your family going to die? Is a really good friend going to die? I go, no. I go, well, okay. Well, that's number 10 gone. So let's start acting as though someone's going to die. And I bet you, apart from this conversation, I bet you in 5 years' time, you won't remember the thing that you were worried about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
because it's too easy to, you know, over exaggerate something, and it's actually really trivial. In the scheme of things, you know, if you live for 80 years, is it important? Does it matter? Are you going to regret it? You know, most things, no. You're just not. So conceptualizing that, you know, and you look at it, I talk about the difference, you know, the fear of standing on the edge of a cliff with no guardrail compared with a clown. You know, your fear of clowns, that's a pretty rare one, but pretty much everything you know, you can work out whether it is
Yeah.
a really serious thing to be concerned about. And normally what that means is once you do that, then you can move on quickly. You go, okay, well, how do I plan around that? That's not so bad. Yes, I'll find the courage to give that a go. And then what happens is generally you build your belief because your experience becomes, wow, that was nowhere near as bad. Remember last time when I thought about that and I was worried and it didn't end up being as bad and I didn't even do anything about it? This time I've done something about it. What's, you know, and you learn by experience, and your belief and, you know, belief in yourself and those around you, it grows. It grows
Yeah.
incrementally to start with, and then it builds. And then hopefully, you know, until you get to the point that, yeah, you don't get rid of fears, but you know, you become unlimited. And that's not an arrogant thing. It's, I believe I have the capability to do almost anything, you know, and again, case in point, did I think 5 years ago I would write a book and have the courage to publish it and put my life out there? Did I dream I would do that and it would make a difference to so many people? And then, you know, now I have I'm blessed and very grateful that I have a global publisher this time. So this time, you know, greatness doesn't care. We'll go into stores all around the world. Did I think 5 years ago I would write a book that, you know, I'm going to be able to wander into the airport in 2 months' time and it's going to be there at the airport? You know, I've been in an airport 1,000 times in my life. Did I ever think one of those times I'd be walking into one of those bookshops I walk into and see my book there? Hell no. So again, case in point. I'll hope that's a case in point.
Now, Jason, through your work, you talk about the gap between the potential and action. Why do you think so many people know that they're capable of more, yet they struggle to take that action?
All right. There's probably a few elements to that. So people might be aware that they're capable of something or more. Let's put it, people know that there is more in them. People know that, you know, and I believe there is a question that, because I asked myself this question many times, it kept coming to me, is that everyone, sometime quietly in their life, and maybe hundreds of times, it was hundreds for me, ask themselves, is this all I'm meant to be? And when I say all, I don't mean that's a derogatory term. It means, am I meant to be any more than, you know, I am now? So the biggest one is purpose, because purpose is the antidote to pretty much everything. Purpose is the antidote to fear. It's because something is really, really meaningful to you. It might be climate change. It could be anything. It doesn't matter what it is if it's meaningful to you. So it's having something that you get up every morning, or pretty much every morning, and it fires your day. You know, it's, if you're working and work's crap, you know, you've got other thing, this big thing in you that's your purpose. And that often would happen to me. That would get me through some incredibly tough times, is because my other purposes were so powerful that I could deal with anything. You know, I could manage, well, pretty much anything. So purpose. And if you, and then the next is courage. It's the difference between, I know there's more in me, and action is courage. Sorry, action is the thing. It's just doing something. It's deciding is making a really important decision. Say, I'm going to change this. This is my purpose. And so this is my plan. I'm going to take these small steps. So it is doing something you don't want to do when you don't want to do it until you do, but it's all pulled together by purpose. Everything aligns to purpose. And again, that really simple analogy of, I want to lose, you know, maybe you're 45 years of age, and I want to lose 7 kilos, doesn't sound very
Purposeful.
Is
Yeah.
that going to help you overcome the challenges you're going to face? It ain't. Some people do it, but it ain't. But having a real purpose and meaning to that, which is, I want to feel the best I've ever felt, or I want to feel good about myself. I want to feel energized. I want to be fit. I want to do this stuff with the kids. I want to wake up in the morning, not go, oh, it's another day. Whatever it is, it's what brings you meaning. And then it's finding some courage and then taking those first small steps towards action. And I got to tell you, you can achieve incredible things. You just got to start taking those steps. And where a plan, especially, I use a 90-day high performance plan that keeps rolling, is that, again, let me give you an example of my goal that was aligned to my purpose. My first really, I call it an impossible goal because I've set myself goals that at some stage in my life, not long before, I would have believed they were impossible for me. That's where my mindset was at. And so going from being smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, couch dweller, not riding a bike, deep fear of drowning, unable to swim, was I going to qualify? I don't know there are pros, but in amateur terms, was I going to qualify for the blue ribbon ultra endurance event on the planet? If you'd asked me that 6 months before I got to that point that my life took this really different pathway that has got me to where I am, I would have gone, you are absolutely bonkers at Anthony. You've got rocks in your head, mate. I could never do that. And that is an epiphany that you see when people that actually start to take action, that start to create belief. It is the most wonderful thing to see. Somebody that starts to believe they can do things that their old version of them, the previous identity would have went, you're joking. No way on earth. That is a special thing. And the more you do that, the more it opens up. The more that you go, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I think but you, with that, you've got to create the plan, because the disconnect between, for me, going, yeah, that goal, Hawaii Ironman, 5 years away, aligns to my purpose and belief. Sometimes they're so far apart, increasing what I'd just done by 15 times in extreme conditions and trying to become, in my age group, amongst the best in the world. That's a big gap. A plan will enable you to see how that builds over time. And a plan determines on principle or in detail, because you only ever get today. Today's the only day. You don't get yesterday's gone. Tomorrow, it'll be today, tomorrow. You only get today. It determines and gives you confidence and belief that if you get up and do what you said you're going to do today, that this big thing will happen by 5 years. And for
Yeah.
me, that was probably one of the biggest kind of epiphanies along the different pathways, because our minds, when we're doing something that's difficult, that requires discretionary effort, and it's right now, but you can't believe that it's going to lead to this over here, it's all too easy to go, it's too hard. I'll leave that till tomorrow. But once you see the connection and you have the belief, you go, you know what? I just need to keep getting up every day and doing these smaller things that I said I was going to do. And that thing over there is going to take care of itself. It will happen. And you know what? If it doesn't happen, that's fine, because you will feel so much better about yourself if you gave something a red hot go than if you didn't. That's regret. Regret is looking back going, should have, could have, would have. I have failed more times than most people, I'm sure, because I haven't stayed in this nice, narrow, comfortable lane. I've had epic failures, epic embarrassments. I've been public humiliated, whatever it is. I've failed loads of times. And I know we all talk about failure as kind of one step. In my mind, I've always said to myself, you are going to fail at every single thing you don't try. And I would say that to everybody listening is, you are going to, I guarantee, well, pretty much guarantee, you will fail at everything you don't have a go at.
Yeah. If you don't start, you don't finish, right?
Absolutely. But you know what, Anthony, you might not even finish. I had a couple of really big goals that are part of that and that I have failed at. One of the things that I wanted to do, and I was, because I'm again, I'm pretty old. So I was at 47 and 48, and I didn't get going until 35. I wanted to qualify for the elite Australian team for the 100K road running championships. At 47 and 48, I didn't get going until 35. And, often I'd be racing people in their late 20s, early 30s, and there's a lot of difference, 15 or 20 years of aging. And I came so close. I managed to get a silver in the Aussie Championships, but I came so close. I'm not disappointed for one moment that I didn't make it, because what I did was I became the best that I could be. And the reality was I was in senior leadership roles. I was a CEO. I was on planes all the time. I never once told myself that anything I was doing was hard. If I needed to do a training session, I'd fly into Melbourne for the day. I'd take a backpack. I'd get off a plane at 7 o'clock at night, stick my backpack on and run home. If I had a 4K training session and the only thing available to me was a 7-meter hotel pool, I would swim 4 kilometers in a 7-meter hotel. I mean, there was a lot of pushing off, but I found a way. Whatever it is, you find a way. If you believe in something and you have a huge purpose, you don't tell yourself, you don't even tell yourself it's hard. You just go find a way, and you get used to that kind of resilience. So
Yeah, I loved what Rob Dial from the Mindset Mentor says. He says, "Do you want to do the hard stuff now and have an easy life later, or do you want to have an easy life now and
yeah,
hard life later?"
yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, perfect. Except for I take hard out because it's not hard.
yeah,
It's only
exactly.
hard if you
Nothing.
think it is.
Was it Henry Ford that says, "If you believe you can't, that's true, and if you believe you can, then that's true as well."
Absolutely. I
So
love the one. I'm not sure if I got that one in. I've got a few quotes that I like
yeah,
in both books. In fact,
yeah,
just to go back and reiterate a bit around purpose, I mean, one of my absolute favorite quotes that I start Greatness Doesn't Care with is the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why,
yeah,
which
absolutely.
which is attributed to Mark Twain, but I'm going to keep it attributed to Mark because I don't know any better. But that's it. Find
Yeah,
out why. Find out why you're here.
yeah,
Find some, bring things into your life that challenge you and light you up.
yeah. And you've only got this today. You've only got this present moment. And as you were talking about before, yesterday, today, tomorrow. Yesterday was history. Tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift.
There you go.
So you got a
And
gift. So you take it.
my favorite, absolute favorite sayings that I write pretty much all the time or in posts, and I know I think it all the time, is that every day is a gift. And you got to have a balance of different things, but it's all you get is today. It's a gift. And if you let it spend all your life, by the time you get to 70, will have had 10 whole years of Mondays. So learn to love Mondays. This is one of the irony. This is one of the things that over the years, it occurred to me that, people, we have a propensity to wish our lives away. So the things that are happening are not days are not so good or whatever, we all, we look forward to a holiday, and you should look forward to a holiday. But if that is at the cost of not enjoying all your other days, then it'll be gone and you'll be back to your normal life. So, and Monday is a case in point, because at 70, you would do anything to get back 10 years of your life. So that you then apply that to the other weekdays and go, how do I level it up? How do I make every day feel a little bit like Friday, where I'm going to get the weekend and some time off, because it's still a day. It's a day. It's 24 hours. So, and one of the other things that, again, I've written a lot about in Greatness is that you only ever get one day and you have to value it, and everything you delay till tomorrow, when you delay things, they get worse. Absolutely. They're still there, and they're getting worse. So just whatever it is, don't delay it. If it's something that's challenging, just face it and do it, because it'll just accumulate in the back of your mind, and it'll kind of it'll drag you back.
Jason, you've completed Ironman races. You've done ultra endurance races, which most people will find and like they would just quit. They wouldn't even get to the finish line. What has those experiences taught you about resilience and human mind?
Okay, well, it's a very good point you make. As you do, Anthony, you make exceptional points, mate. I love coming back on here. To come back on here. Yeah, yeah. Look, again, you can overcome anything. What's interesting is people, they do focus on, the extreme races. What gets you to one extreme race a year or maybe two extreme races, 11 months of training. And the resilience part is how you get up and do, with discipline, what it is you say you're going to do every day. And it actually requires collectively much more resilience to do the work to get you there than it actually does in the race. So you're kind of already prepared. And what resilience does, the way I believe resilience works, is as you get good at it, and as you master it, again, you put things kind of into perspective. But it's like belief and experience. Your mind will give you the ammunition you need to convince that really negative voice that you should quit. And one element of that is belief. But your experience tells you that when stuff happens and struggle happens, you can react differently, you can react positively, and you can actually get through this. And so you create, your mindset becomes more positive. A lot of experience will determine a lot of things with resilience. Again, it's about experience that you can actually get through something. So you develop the techniques. But what sits behind it is kind of that confidence, and resilience is how you how you prove to yourself very quickly in the moment that you're going to be okay, that you can get through this, and this is actually what it is you need to do. So you don't let the struggle impact you. You use your resilience to keep moving. And look, I've had some, as I said, I bounced back from 35 hospitalizations. I've had times where I've run with plastic skin all over the back of me because I needed to get to an Ironman race, and I had been hit by a truck and taken all my skin off, but I need to get training again, and all sorts of stuff. Or one of the books I took a lot about, the Western States 100 miler, which, there are a lot of 100-mile extreme trail races around the world. And one of the blue ribbon events, probably the oldest and most famous, is the Western States 100 miler over the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. And I was running, 6 hours one day up hills, and then 3 hours the next day up steps, and then 6 hours the next day. Like, I trained hard for a long time for that race. I'd never been to altitude. I'd actually never been to any sort of altitude before I went to the race. Race starts at kind of 6,000 feet in altitude. So your heart is going 30% quicker standing still than it would standing still at sea level. First 6 miles of the race are 4,500 feet vertical up to snow-covered peaks. That's, if you've run Heartbreak Hill in City to Surf, that's like a couple of hundred times the elevation of Heartbreak Hill in the first 6 miles, and then you've got 94 miles to go. I had, unbeknownst to me, I'd been running on a severely torn medial meniscus, which was coming out of my knee and had wedged back in between the bones. So I was running 150 to 200 kilometers a week for many, 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 many years on that. I should have got something done, but I just kept going. Anyway, I ran over the first mountaintop in that race. And by the way, that was my first ever trail race. And the film crew, they laughed. They interviewed me before the race, and they laughed. They go, "You're turned up for the Western States 100, and you haven't even run a single trail race." You have to qualify. These days, it's incredibly tough to get in. And, this is 38,000 feet in vertical elevation change over 100 miles. You're running through rivers, you run over snow-covered peaks. In the middle of the day, it's 100 degrees in the canyons when you're going through rivers on a course that you've never been over, that's got rattlesnakes. It's got all sorts of nasty things around. And I'd never done trail race before. Fortunately, I managed to get in, and they laughed. They laughed. I was more going, "You are dead set crazy to be doing this." And so I did that race. I lost, 6 toenails during the race. They came off. So, running down 2,000 or 3,000 feet vertical, you can be running downhill for 40, 35 or 40 minutes with the toes jammed into the end of your shoes and your toenails are gone, and you've had lots of, blisters super glued back. They nick them with a little knife, squirt some super glue in, push it shut, duct tape it, away you go. That took a bit of resilience. When I was running down, I was a couple of 100 meters off that, gone up vertical a long way for the first 7 miles, 100 meters down the other side. And my knee, which had been playing up really badly, all the way up to the race, it's really started to hurt. I'm in this place where I'm going, right, okay, you're 7 miles in, you got 93 to go. Your knee is really hurting. What are you going to do, JD? What are you going to do? That's what my head was saying. This body's not doing 100 miles today. And I just went, you know what? I've run 100 kilometers every week. I've done the work. I've earned this. I deserve to be here. And this voice, you're not going to beat me today. And all I went was, right, okay, next aid station. Because the aid stations are kind of in the middle of nowhere in the forest. I went, you know what? Let's reevaluate the next aid station, JD. Let's just keep it going. Let's just get there and then we'll think about it. So did that. And I just kept going to the next one and the next one. And I kept going. And that day I was blessed to get a silver belt buckle, which is kind of the top 15. No, they only let 369 athletes on average each year. You've got to qualify in some pretty extreme races that are similar. And I think there was something like, I read only sort of 10 to 15% will finish in the 24 in one day, and you get a silver belt buckle, and that's of the 369. It's a very small group, and there's a very high percentage, something like only 59% of people that have already qualified actually finish within that 30-hour cutoff time of 36 hour. Anyway, so I just kept telling myself, I'd earned this. I deserve to be here. I probably won't come back. This, you're not going to break me today. And so I just, all the positive affirmations, and I just kept going. That's what that is. Sorry, that's one of my favorite picks up there. But yeah, you can, if you do the work, you can do anything. Anything that you believe you can do, create the belief.
Oh, wow. I can't even imagine. I mean, I've done a couple of trail races, but it was only 10K, but can't imagine doing 100. I mean, the greatness doesn't care is a powerful title.
Thank you.
Someone listening today is feeling stuck, held back by their circumstances, their age, their past mistakes, their fear of failure. What would you say to them? What do you want to let them know?
Have a look at me. I've stuffed up more times than anyone. I left it till 35. I was doing things in my 50s that I never believed that I could do. And now I'm doing things into my 60s that I never believed I could do. So when you keep pushing on, when you keep giving it a go, stuff will reveal that you actually, like I said, stuff will reveal itself that you haven't even thought about before. And anyone can find greatness, and people do. People find greatness well beyond what I've done. Don't be looking at me as the ultimate role model. I have many flaws and faults, and I do, but I try, to improve. If I've stuffed things up before, I try to be kind to people. I try and do everything I can that makes me a better person. And I do a lot of work now with people. I just do it for free because the people that come to me for help, or the people I meet in everyday life that actually need help, they become friends. You just help them. Sometimes do, people go, oh, can I pay you to do this? And they're actually people I know. I go, but I don't want you to pay me. Like, I actually get a lot out of this, and that's what brings meaning. But any single person can go find their own greatness, and greatness is relative to where you are now. That's all that matters. That's one thing I really, 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 really want to, get home today. Is greatness is about, you know, being improving yourself, achieving more, being better, being a better person, better than you were yesterday. And just sometimes they're big days and sometimes they're small days, or sometimes you might go backwards a little bit. That's okay. you're going to move forwards again tomorrow. Or, you greatness is about you feeling really good, something that brings meaning in your life that you do, that it requires you to overcome struggle, persevere, and demonstrate as many as you can of the 14 steps to greatness.
Absolutely.
So that's anyone can do it. If you doubt it, give me a call.
Yeah. Okay, last question is, what is one practical step that people can take this week to move towards their potential?
Look, there's an alignment of things. Firstly, purpose. Sometimes you can find it, sometimes it reveals itself to you, but you work out what it is that's meaningful. What do you want to take a position on in life? What would you know, what would make you feel proud in 10 years' time? That's a really good one. So, firstly, if you haven't really already got your purpose, or you haven't defined the thing that you would love to achieve or do, then you need to do that first. You can sit down. That's not a this week thing. Do it today. Just sit down. Journaling is very effective, and I journal. I want to do a lot more journaling, but I do reckon, because I run so many hours. I've done so many. I do a lot of things in my mind. I get a lot of presence time. Presence can be achieved as an element of stillness. I found I could get presence through movement because that's all I thought about, and being outside and running. But that would be the first thing is, and if you've already got that, then deciding what action you're going to take and making one small step. Anybody can do any of that, but you really got to know what yeah, really helps to know what your purpose is, because once, if you don't really know that, so even if you set yourself a goal of something you'd really like to achieve and you get going today on the first step, as you go, then give some presence and some stillness time to thinking, if I achieve this, what will it really mean to me? And therefore, what actually is it I'm searching for? What meaning am I searching for? Because, meaning is everything. Meaning is an outcome of purpose. So you work it backwards and go, what would bring me meaning? What would I feel great about myself about in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years, in my lifetime? And once you have understanding what will bring you meaning and your purpose, you can overcome anything. Without that, though, if you just keep setting goals, it's my experience is with people that do that is they kind of fall in a heap and then they kind of go looking for the next goal, and you're always chasing a goal. I like to describe it as I'm always I'm always trying to be aligned to my purpose, not I'm always chasing goals. And so this project, the second book, the first project is a purpose to go, you know what? I've learned a bit. I'm very grateful, always been very grateful. For the first time I nearly died in a car accident and didn't, I turned that into gratitude, as you know, instantly. But this project is about, and again, it's not ego, it's kind of, is if I can help another human, that brings meaning to me. Helping another human being have a better life. I don't know what more meaning there is in life than helping another human being have a better life. Helping share the things that changed your life, that you learned, that you learned from mistakes, you know, sharing wisdom, that's what you do, Anthony. You very specifically aligned to mindset is you share wisdom and you bring people on here, and good for you, that impart their wisdom and give people an invitation. Today is an invitation to anybody listening to go and start becoming the greatest version of you. That's an invitation. It's down to you now, but that's the invitation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've effectively treated this podcast as a university for myself to learn from the greats, right? And be able to change myself so that I can be the change in the world. And this is what this podcast is birthed on: is be the change in the world that you want to see. And for this episode, you can listen to this episode. You might not remember everything that you've listened to because it's going to be over about an hour and a half or more. But there is an article that you can read, and there's also what's going to be there on your page is a practical guide, which is 3-page guide, which is a distilled version of everything we've talked about, which is give you some reflection point and also some practical steps to move yourself forward today. And that's basically what it's about, is downloading that is free and applying
Yeah.
that in your life. Yeah,
That's your invitation, and then getting going.
absolutely. Now, Jason, tell us where people can find your books. Also, if people are wanting some help and some guidance from you, how they can connect with you.
Okay, so I'll give you my, obviously, website link. You can Google me and it'll come up with tons of stuff. You can Google Unlimited, Jason Dunn, Greatness Doesn't Care. We'll come up with tons of stuff, and you can get in contact with me. Unlimited is online. It's on loads of platforms like Amazon. Greatness Doesn't Care is up for pre-order on more than 100 platforms around the world. Release dates are 28 July, Australia and New Zealand, this time into stores. So hopefully go in and ask your local store. That would really help me. So in stores, it'll go into airport stores, and then North America and the UK is November 3rd, and then a whole bunch of other countries after that. So, but yeah, my contact details, and I'll give you my email as well. So I love helping people.
Yeah, 100%. Well, on that episode page, you will have all of those details, including the 2 books previewed as well. So people can just click on the link and go to your website and pre-order.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's one place that people can go to and get all the information from one page. Yeah.
Fantastic. Your podcast is awesome, by the way, mate.
Oh, thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
It is. It
You
is
know, it's like you said, it's finding your purpose and just following that consistently and getting better and better and better and better and learning from every episode. I I aim to get better than the last one. And so I'm not competing against anyone. I'm on my own journey, but I'm
awesome.
also, so I've always been a bit of a pioneer. And every single guest has said to me, what you're building, no other podcaster is doing. It's
Oh,
because I'm setting the benchmark for all the other podcasters to catch up to me.
indeed. Well, what you're really doing is you're just constantly lifting, lifting your game. You're constantly
100%.
aspiring to your own greatness, and whatever everyone else does, they do. But yep, you're going after your own. Well done.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Pleasure,
Now,
mate.
now, Jason, 6 really quick fire questions for you. 1 word or a short sentence. How do you define success, and has that definition evolved for you over time?
Success is overcoming. The greater level of success depends on the amount of struggle you overcome.
Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
I don't know whether I have a greatest one. The human I'd most like to meet is David Attenborough.
What is something that you believe that others may disagree with?
Anybody can find their own greatness.
If you could go back and give young Jason some advice, what would it be?
I can't, so I won't. Oh, sorry. Let me the counter. Well, I can't. The counter to that is, change today.
What is one message that you'd like to share with the world?
Do you think I'd nail that, wouldn't you? Sorry, I've been concentrating for the last hour and a half on questions that I didn't know what they could be. Look, I'd say believe in yourself.
Back yourself as well. Believe and back yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to be a champion and have a champion mindset?
I don't see myself as a champion. Sorry. Does that exclude me from the podcast?
Everyone is a champion.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm an ordinary guy that gets up every day and just gives it his best shot.
I love your humbleness. But
wouldn't it have been that way once upon a time? Wouldn't have been that way, mate. I do like myself a lot better these days.
Yeah. But I believe that every single one of us is a champion because we champion our lives and we have greatness within us.
We do.
Jason, this has been a amazing conversation. Like last time I enjoyed it. This time you're welcome back anytime anytime you want to come and join me. I love this conversation because it reminds us that greatness isn't something reserved for a select few. It is not determined by where you started, what you've been through, or what challenges you've faced. What you've shared today, Jason, greatness doesn't care about your age, your background, your setbacks, or your excuses. It simply responds to the choices that you make and the actions that you take every day.
Fine.
Now, if you're feeling stuck in your journey, you're questioning your potential, or you're standing at the edge of your next chapter, I hope this conversation has really encouraged you to take the next step, no matter how small that it might seem. If you'd like to learn more about Jason, look at the show notes. Also, there'll be the episode page for the Champion Mindset Collective, and have a look and get the book Unlimited and Greatness Doesn't Care. Pre-order that now. Don't wait. Order it now so that you get it when it's released. And as always, if you've enjoyed this podcast episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a review and share it with someone who can benefit from this. Remember, mindset shapes outcomes, and every small action that you take today has the power to create a very different tomorrow. Until next time, keep showing up and champion your life. And I also want to invite you, if you are navigating redundancy, career change, rejection, major life transitions in your life, I'd love you to come and join the Champion Reset in the Champion Academy. It's designed to help you rebuild your confidence, get clarity and direction. Thanks for being a part of the Champion Mindset Collective. Lastly, I just want to say you are loved, you are worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.